I'm 52 years old, and for most of my life, I've been the kind of woman who played by the rules. I was a good daughter, a good wife, a good mother. I married young, raised two beautiful daughters, and stayed loyal to my husband Tom through every up and every down this life threw at us. I believed in the quiet decency of routine, in the steady, unassuming love that grows in the shared soil of a lifetime. Love, to me, wasn't a firework display. It was the familiar, comforting warmth of the hearth. It was steady, not thrilling, not new, just there, but something happened not too long ago. Something I still can't fully explain. Even to myself, it wasn't planned. It wasn't supposed to mean anything. It was just a ride home from the grocery store, and yet, it left me questioning everything I thought I knew about who I am, and who I thought I'd always be. I never thought something like this. Something so quiet and so profound could happen to me. But it did, and I'm telling you this story, as a warning, and as a hope. Please, don't make the same mistake I did, and wait 52 years to ask yourself the most important question of all. Before we begin this journey, I want to invite you to ours. If you believe in stories that explore the quiet, often overlooked moments that change our lives forever, please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and click that notification bell. It means the world to us and allows us to continue sharing these truths. It was a Tuesday afternoon, the kind of gray, forgettable day where time seems to move a little slower, the air thick with the promise of a rain that never comes. My car, a trusty but tired station wagon, had broken down again. The third time this month. It was sitting in the grocery store parking lot like a stubborn metal beast, refusing to budge. Tom, my husband, was stuck in meetings all afternoon, his calendar a fortress I couldn't possibly breach with a domestic inconvenience like a dead battery. So when his colleague, Ethan, who had been grabbing a sandwich at the deli, offered to give me a ride home, I accepted without thinking twice. It was a simple, kind gesture. That's all. I knew Ethan, or at least I knew of him, from the few company functions I'd attended over the years. He was younger than Tom, maybe in his late 30s, with a calm, assured way of speaking and kind, intelligent eyes. He was the sort of man who always seemed genuinely polite, who held the door open and looked you in the eye when he asked how you were, as if he actually wanted to know the answer. And while I had never given it much thought before, I had always noticed, in a distant, abstract way, how his attention lingered, not inappropriately, not in a way that made you uncomfortable, but just for a beat longer than most people's. He seemed to actually listen. We made small talk in the parking lot as he loaded my grocery bags into the trunk of his clean, silver sedan. "Are you sure this isn't out of your way?" I asked, settling into the passenger seat. The new car smell, a stark contrast to my own familiar, lived-in vehicle. "Not at all," he smiled, a genuine, easy smile. "I live just 10 minutes past your place. Besides, this gives me a good excuse to get out of the office early." His voice had a certain softness to it, a warm, unhurried quality. It made me feel oddly safe, which was not something I often felt in the presence of men who weren't Tom. With Tom, everything had become transactional over the years. Our conversations were a series of logistical negotiations, grocery lists, bills to be paid, picking up the dry cleaning. I didn't resent him for it. I truly didn't. That's just what marriage becomes after 30 years, doesn't it? A partnership in managing the small, mundane details of a shared life, the romance, the mystery. It had all been packed away long ago, like old love letters in a dusty box in the attic. As we pulled out of the lot, the sun broke through the thick gray clouds for a brief, glorious moment. It lit up the dashboard in a warm, golden hue, and I saw Ethan glance sideways at me, his hand relaxed on the wheel. "You seem quiet," he said, his observation gentle, not accusatory. I just shrugged, looking out at the passing storefronts. "It's just been one of those days, you know how it is." He didn't press, just nodded, his eyes back on the road, but something about his presence, his quiet, attentive presence, filled the car in a way that was hard to ignore. It wasn't romantic. It was just human. He was present, he was listening. We talked about the usual safe things, the terrible traffic on the interstate, the fickle spring weather, a new French bakery that had opened on Elm Street. I found myself talking more than I usually did, and laughing more than I expected. Especially when he told me a story about Tom trying to fix the office coffee machine last week and flooding the entire Break room, he didn't mention that part, I said, wiping a tear of actual laughter from the corner of my eye. He probably left out the part where he tried to blame it on the summer intern, too, Ethan added, grinning. I laughed again. A real, full-bodied laugh that felt rusty in my throat. And then I let the moment settle into a comfortable quiet. The buzz of the city faded as we drove into the slower, greener suburban stretch of Maple Lane. The houses looked washed in the golden afternoon light, familiar, safe. Then we came to a stoplight. We idled in the warm car. In the quiet stillness for a few moments, the only sound was the soft hum of the engine and the distant cry of a blue jay. Something about that stillness felt different. It was as if the moment itself had taken a deep, contemplative breath of its own. Ethan turned to me, not dramatically, not like in a movie, but just enough to meet my eyes. His expression was serious now, but still kind. May I ask you something, Sarah? I nodded, unsure why my pulse suddenly felt louder in my ears. Do you ever wonder if you're still seen? The question, it was so simple, so direct, and it hit me in a place I hadn't visited, hadn't dared to even look at, in a long, long time. It was as if he had reached into my chest and gently touched the most bruised, most hidden part of my heart. Seen, I repeated softly, the word feeling foreign on my tongue. He nodded again, his gaze unwavering. I mean, as more than someone's wife, more than someone's mother, as just you, Sarah. I had to look away then, out the window toward the blur of perfect houses and manicured lawns, trying to keep my voice from breaking, from betraying the sudden, overwhelming wave of emotion that was cresting inside me. All the time, I said, the words a quiet, painful confession to a near stranger. The light turned green, but we didn't move right away. He waited a beat, as if giving my quiet admission the space and respect it deserved, as if he understood the weight of those two small words. I didn't say more. I couldn't, and then, gently, he pressed his foot to the gas and the car rolled forward. We didn't speak for the next few minutes. The air had changed. It was thicker now, quieter, but my thoughts were racing, a chaotic symphony of shock, recognition, and a strange, terrifying sense of relief. This is the moment that changes everything. Not a kiss, not a touch, just a question. A question that implies, I see you. Have you ever had a moment like that? A quiet, unexpected interaction that completely shifted your perspective. If this story is resonating with you, if you understand the power of being truly seen, please hit that like button. It's a small gesture that means so much. The rest of the ride continued in that new, profound silence. But it wasn't the kind of silence that begged to be filled with nervous chatter. It felt more like something was unfolding between us. Something slow, cautious, and incredibly fragile. I sat with my hands folded neatly over my purse, staring out the window, pretending to admire the blooming lilacs in the neat rows of front yards. But inside, I was somewhere else entirely. Ethan's question lingered in my mind like a drop stone, the ripples still spreading across the still, quiet surface of my soul. Do you ever wonder if you're still seen? He hadn't meant it flirtatiously. I was almost sure of it. Or maybe he had. I wasn't even sure what flirtation looked like anymore. But either way, it was the first time in years, maybe even a decade, that someone had looked at me and not just seen Tom's wife. Or the woman who always brings her signature potato salad to the neighborhood cookout. He had seen Sarah. We turned onto my street and I glanced over at Ethan. His profile was calm, focused on the road. There was no smirk, no knowing look. He wasn't trying to push me anywhere. He had simply noticed me. He had held up a mirror and for the first time in a very long time, I was forced to look. Thanks for the ride, I said softly as he pulled into my driveway. He didn't put the car in park right away. Just let it idle there. The engine a low, gentle hum. Sarah, he said, his voice quiet but certain, turning to face me fully. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable back there. I hope I didn't. You didn't? I replied quickly. Perhaps too quickly. It's just no one's asked me something like that in a long time. He looked at me then, really looked, his gaze so direct and empathetic that I felt like I had to do something with my hands, with my eyes, anything to anchor myself in the sudden, intense current of the moment. I've seen the way you carry yourself at those company parties, he said, his voice thoughtful. There's something in you that's still very alive, a spark. But I get the sense you've been told, or you've told yourself, to keep it tucked away. I felt a surprising heat rise to my cheeks. Not of embarrassment exactly, but a flush of pure Unadulterated awareness, I was being spoken to in a language of emotional intimacy that I hadn't heard in years. I didn't know what to say to that. So I just reached for the door handle. But before I could open it, he said, "If it's okay, could I walk you to the porch?" I hesitated, the rational part of me, the one that managed bills and baked birthday cakes and reminded Tom to take his blood pressure pills, screamed aloud, panicked, no. But another part of me, a quieter but more insistent part, the part that felt like it had been holding its breath for 30 years, whispered yes. I just nodded, unable to form the word. Sure. We walked up the short, familiar path to my front door. My porch light was flickering, and I made a mental note to have Tom fix it, knowing full well that I would probably just end up doing it myself on Saturday. I fished in my bag for my keys, the tension stretching like a delicate silken fabric between us. Not tight, not uncomfortable, just fragile. "I'm sorry if I crossed a line back there," he said again, his hands in his pockets, standing a respectful step behind me on the porch. "You didn't," I said again, turning to face him, the keys now in my hand. It's hard to know what to do with a moment like that. He nodded, a look of deep understanding in his eyes. I think sometimes moments like that happen just to remind us that we're still human, still capable of feeling things. There it was again, that calm, devastating honesty. The kind that didn't demand a response but made you want to give one anyway. "Thank you," I said, my voice catching a little in my throat, "for the ride and for the conversation." He looked at me a moment longer, then smiled that gentle, kind smile. "Have a good evening, Sarah. You too, Ethan." He turned and walked back to his car, and I stood there for a long moment with the key in my hand, the front door still locked behind me. My entire world quietly, irrevocably, shifted when I finally stepped inside. The house was dim and silent. The faint scent of lemon cleaner still hung in the air from my afternoon wipe down. I set my purse on the counter and just stood there in the kitchen, listening to the stillness, to the hum of the refrigerator. It wasn't a dramatic moment, nothing had happened in the traditional sense. No lines had been crossed, no kisses stolen, and yet something profound had happened. Something I could feel in the strange new tightness of my chest and the unfamiliar ache in my hands. Ethan had seen me, and now I couldn't unsee myself. The days that followed felt strange, not in any obvious way, but in the quiet forgotten corners of my own routine. When I folded laundry, I found myself staring at Tom's shirts, wondering about the man who wore them, the man I shared a bed with, and why we had become such polite, efficient strangers. When I walked past the mirror in the hallway, I would pause, my own reflection startling me. I kept hearing Ethan's question echoing in my mind. "Do you ever wonder if you're still seen?" It haunted me in the gentlest, most persistent way. Tom didn't notice anything different. Of course he rarely did anymore. We had drifted into that comfortable, dangerous stage of a long marriage where silence isn't awkward, it's just the default setting. He'd ask if I'd paid the utility bill. I'd ask if he remembered to take the trash out. We were a well-oiled machine. For managing a household, we slept side by side, often back to back, our conversations mostly about schedules, not feelings. I didn't resent him for it. I honestly didn't. I had played my part in building this quiet, passionless life, but there was a growing, undeniable sense inside me that I had started disappearing. First slowly, then all at once, then 2 days later, on a Thursday afternoon, Ethan texted. "Ethan, I hope this isn't crossing any lines, but I'm headed out for coffee in a bit if you'd like to join." No pressure at all. I stared at the message for a long time. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I could have ignored it. I probably should have ignored it. But I didn't. Where? We met at a small, unassuming place on the corner of 5th and Lawson. It wasn't fancy. Just a cozy, independent coffee shop with ivy crawling up the brick exterior and windows that always fogged up in the morning. I got there early and chose a booth near the back, partly to feel safe and partly to stay unseen. When he arrived, he looked surprised to see me already there. But then again, I was surprised at myself, too. He slid into the seat across from me and gave me that quiet, familiar smile. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I almost didn't," I said truthfully, stirring my black coffee, though I hadn't added anything to it. "I know," he said. There was another silence. But again it wasn't uncomfortable. It was thoughtful, pregnant with unspoken understanding. I've been thinking about what you said, I finally admitted, my voice quiet, my gaze fixed on the swirling coffee in my cup. About being seen. He leaned forward slightly, his posture open, listening. I guess I didn't realize how much I missed it. I continued, the confession feeling both difficult and necessary, not attention, not in a loud way, but just someone noticing, someone seeing past the surface. He nodded. We spend so much of our lives taking care of others, our spouses, our children, our jobs, that we forget to check in with ourselves. It's easy to get lost. I think I got lost a while ago, I said quietly. The admission hanging in the air between us. Neither of us said anything for a moment. Then, without changing his tone or his posture, Ethan said, I don't want to complicate your life, Sarah. That's not why I reached out. I enjoy talking to you, that's all. And it was the profound, simple sincerity in his voice that finally ended me. It wasn't flirtation. It wasn't a suggestion of something more. It was just human kindness. It felt rare, sacred almost. We talked for nearly an hour, about nothing important, and yet about everything. Our childhoods, our favorite meals, the music we listened to when we couldn't sleep. I told him that I used to dance alone in the kitchen when the girls were little just to feel alive. He smiled like that was the most beautiful, most important thing he'd heard all week. When we finally stood to leave, we hesitated again. That now familiar pause settled between us like a soft, warm veil. He opened the door for me, and as I stepped out into the bright afternoon light, he said, Sarah, if you ever need to talk or just breathe differently for a while, I'm here. I just nodded, holding his gaze for a heartbeat longer than I should have. Thank you. We went our separate ways on that sidewalk. No touches, no promises, just an understanding. But that night, as I lay in bed next to Tom, his back turned to me, his breathing slow and even, I felt something stir deep inside me. It wasn't guilt. It wasn't regret. It was awareness. Something had fundamentally changed, and for the first time in years, I wasn't sure what came next. A week passed, I didn't see Ethan. And I didn't hear from him, and I didn't reach out either, not because I didn't want to, but because I needed the space to understand what was happening inside of me. I walked through my days like a woman carrying an invisible, precious, and terrifying question in her pocket. It wasn't about Ethan anymore, not really. It was about me. Who had I become? And more importantly, who was I still allowed to be? One evening, after Tom had gone upstairs to watch the news, his nightly ritual, I stayed back in the kitchen, wiping the same clean counter over and over again. My reflection in the dark kitchen window stared back at me, a woman of 52, her hair streaked with more gray than she usually admitted, the lines around her eyes telling a story of laughter and worry. But my eyes looked different. They looked awake. I thought of the version of me from 20 years ago, before the marriage had settled into a comfortable, quiet habit, before the girls had left for college, before the silence in the house had become so loud. That woman, that younger Sarah, she danced barefoot on tile floors while cooking pasta, she made messes in the kitchen, she read poetry late at night. That woman hadn't vanished. She had just been waiting, and somehow, a single, simple question from a man I barely knew had cracked the shell I had so carefully built around her. That night, I told Tom I needed to talk. We sat at the dining room table, the same table where we had planned our future when we were young and broke and full of impossible dreams. I looked at him, really looked at him. For the first time in what felt like an eternity, the man I'd built a life with, the father of my children, my partner. Even now, I've been feeling invisible, I said, my voice quiet but steady. He blinked, surprised by the sudden seriousness. What do you mean invisible? I mean, I don't think you really see me anymore, I said, my voice gaining a little strength. And to be fair, I don't think I've let you. I think we stopped seeing each other. He sat back, folding his arms, a defensive posture. Where is all this coming from, Sarah? I hesitated, choosing my words with the utmost care. It's coming from a place inside me that's been quiet for too long. I didn't tell him about Ethan, not because I was hiding something, but because this wasn't about another man. This was about the woman I had stopped being, the woman I wanted to remember. Tom looked down, rubbing his jaw the way he always did when he didn't know what to say. I guess I thought we were comfortable. We are, I said, a sad smile touching my lips. We are so comfortable, Tom, but I want more than just comfortable. I want to feel alive again. For a long, long time, neither of us said anything. But for the first time in years, we were truly there, together in a moment that wasn't about chores or schedules or bills. It was just about us. Eventually, he looked at me, a new, uncertain expression on his face. "What do you need from me?" he asked. "I don't know yet," I whispered honestly, "but I need to start finding out." The next morning, I went for a walk. No makeup, no destination, just cool morning air and bright sunlight and time. And halfway through my route, my feet, with a mind of their own, stopped. I was standing in front of the little coffee shop on 5th and Lawson. I stood there for a moment, watching people come and go, each with their own stories, their own lives. Then I walked inside. Ethan wasn't there, and strangely, I was okay with that. I ordered my coffee and took a seat in the same booth near the back. I pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook from my purse that I hadn't used in years. The pages were blank, crisp, and clean. It felt like a beginning, not of something reckless or forbidden, but of something necessary. I didn't need saving. I didn't need a whirlwind romance or a dramatic rescue. I just needed to remember that I was still here, that I was still worth seeing. And as I sipped my coffee and put my pen to that first blank page, I realized something else, too. I had already started seeing myself again, and for now, that was more than enough.